Welcome
What
to Maker's
do you
Club.
mean with the last day class? Last day class until the break.
Until the break. No, this is the last class until the break, and this is the Grasshopper session 2 that we continued last Thursday class. So today, as we state in the web page of the, I'm going to share my screen. Share. What are the classes? So, BCN. Can I take this out of the screen? Yes, perfect. We know clubs, make club, Grasshopper class. Last day we saw a little bit of how to make animations and a little bit of physics with Kangaroo. I want that if you can make this session a little bit more dynamic, that you can ask. I prefer that go slightly slower and you ask all your questions and you really know what we are doing every time. We have invited Arman and Daniel that are actually really good at the Grasshopper. So they can answer also the questions that I don't know how to answer, but I figure out. Let's go with the last day script. The last day script, if I remember properly, was how to create a DOM. Is we create a simple polyline where we actually, let me also put the bifocals. Where we were making a mesh up to the polyline and we were subdividing a little bit the mesh. Why? To get more flexibility on the mesh calculation, because as you know, more points we have, more accurate is the definition of the mesh, and Kangaroo calculates points, doesn't think about lines, don't think about surfaces, not at all. So if you remember, we have the part of the script where we design our geometry. This is the constraint, the geometry, the base geometry. And after we have the rules on how the geometry is going to behave. And we have the engine, that is the output. Remember that before switching on anything, switch on the engine, you have to save the script, because if you put the values wrongly, it's gonna actually crash your computer, really probable. So always that we work with meshes, we need to have the component show. That is actually to show us the mesh, the first thing on the list. And we always connect to the mesh merge component. So when the engine has calculated everything, will give us a lot of, the Bouncy Solver will give us a lot of information, like it says null, 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 because actually the point calculation of the engine, and you see it's also giving us the mesh. Why is on the first one? Because we actually connected show. Remember that you also need to flatten all the inputs so it works properly. I also recommend to flatten each one of the merge components so we don't make any possible mistake. In this case, we also set it up the mesh load. That is a general force that is going to push our mesh. It's going to distribute it evenly through the unit. In this case, it's pushing it up because we want to create a DOM based on this mesh. Also, we need to extract on how we're going to lock this geometry so it doesn't fly away up in the air. So we can use the component of Kangaroo mesh corners that's going to extract the corners of our mesh. You can see it's going to be the anchor points. These anchor points, we can assign that if they are fixed, or we want to assign that they can move a certain position, that will be the target one. For example, we can say that this point could displace it to here, but usually by default we don't use them. And we can also estimate, distribute the mesh, how each line is gonna behave. In this case, last day we use the edge length. So if you connect the edge length, all the edges are gonna behave exactly the same. But what we can do is assign different behaviors to the type of line. For example, we can take account that the exterior line deforms less than the interior one. How we do that? Actually, we can use the component mesh edges that is by defect in the mesh components of Grasshopper. And we can divide between exterior lines and interior lines. Once we have the lines, we can use a line component that is clap the length of each line to a certain amount. In this case, we want to make the line length exactly the same. So we measure each line and we multiply or divide. In this case, we multiply by 1, so we keep the same length. The interior lines, in this case, we will also keep in the same length. Let's see how it works. And after we have a smoothen component to actually just make everything slightly smoother. So let's switch off everything, the preview, and let's calculate. So you can see the mesh is already shaking on what, based on what? Actually, the force, the main force, because we only have one force here, that is the vertex load. So we're gonna apply 4.6 on the unit Z, it means vertical force to the mesh. Here we have different lines, exterior and interior one. They will be these ones. So if we set up a multiplier that the exterior ones can deform more, it means we can measure the length and multiply them by 1.5. You can see we are only affecting the exterior lines. And it's making this weird shape. Why? Because they can extend more than the deformation of the inner ones. So always you can play with these numbers, but somehow they are related. So for example, we can say that the interior ones can deform more than actually the exterior ones. So actually the exterior right now, as you see, are clapping the geometry. Meanwhile, the exterior is producing an inflation shape. That will be the main difference between using edge length that will work with all the edges as uniform in a uniform way, or dividing between exterior lines and interior lines. Is that okay? Lovely heart. So
I just want to tell you something.
yes.
In the congruent tool, you don't need to flatten, and also you can use it with the data tree. It's gonna rebuild the structure of the tree after like giving it in output. So
Nice.
if you put it like with the entwine, so at the end you can just took the branch that it has a mesh on it.
So exactly. So what Armand is saying is the merge component and flatten, we will have everything in just one list. Working with data trees, what Armand wants to say, this is a component that makes one different list. Sorry, it's a little bit slow. So let's switch off everything. So we are making actually trees based on the data. If you cannot open more, you can just click by zooming in to make more inputs. So let's see what's different between working in branches or not. Actually, it's good because if you know how to work with branches, it's always better because you can have more control over the data. You can use a Param Viewer that is a component that will show up how is the structure of our data. So in this case, we only have one branch, and we can see if you double click by the graphical representation of it. If you click on Param Viewer, actually we can see that we have each component has a different branch. So if we just connect the same, obviously we'll need to reset. You see, it's behaving the same, but now the output actually is flattening again. So actually keeps the same order. That's nice. So let's go over the next one. We're gonna always grow and make small and more small animations one after each other. So let's try to make a minimum surface. How we can make a minimum surface? Do you know what is a minimum surface? Are these kind of geometries when you have the minimum amount of surface for a designed geometry. Is, as the name says, is quite obvious. So how we produce this kind of, geometries is about surface tension. That is the concept that we just introduced right now. So for example, let's say this geometry, how we make a minimum surface out of it. Actually, you start with a cylinder, for example, actually a circle, another circle, and another circle. And you build you can loft this surface. What you can do is anchor these points so they cannot move, but we don't anchor the initial ones, the inner ones. And what we will do is apply uniform reducing tension to the inner lines of the mesh to actually reduce the ledge-edge distance. So that will create an overall tension uniformly distributed along this mesh to create this kind of shapes. Let's close this one. And let's create some rectangles, for example. I'm gonna take these rectangles and embed them into Grasshopper. Okay. So now at first I need to create boundary surface. To create a surface that this will be our flat one. Let's create a box for the top and a box from the bottom, moving down. So for that we need to actually list them. You can also reference them separately. It's not a big deal. So we have the first one, the second one, and the third one. So let's take these curves. Bifocals. So we have one curve and the second curve. And let's extrude them. Extrude these geometries in Z. For example, let's extrude, I don't know, 50. Okay. And let's do the same for the following one, but let's do it negatively. Yes? Okay. So we have all these components. Let's join them. Brep join. You can use merge component or just connect everything all together. We have one unique brep right now with this following shape. So let's now what we need to do. Always be slowly switch off the components so nothing becomes too messy. We're gonna mesh them. Let's mesh all the components. You see the original mesh is quite simple. It's not gonna behave really well based on this. So let's change the settings, that is mesh settings. So we can refine the mesh. Let's increase the point definition. So actually we're going to define that the minimum count is, for example, 100. Maybe it's too much, so I'm going to check. Actually, it's not that much. So let's increase it to 200. This is the easiest way to actually refine a mesh. Smallest uniform, and we want that the that everything is stitched, so it keeps the same shape, the maximum distance, and the aspect aspect ratio, the maximum distance. Well, based on these values, you can actually start and then producing only quadrilateral faces, for example. In this case, like this is going to behave more or less okay. We have this mesh. So now we need to take the anchor points. What would be the anchor points? We can, for example, take deconstruct mesh or look for mesh edges. With mesh edges, actually, we're going to see the interior and the exterior ones. Let's see where are the exterior ones that are the ones that are interesting us. Actually, we can see that automatically this component will take the exterior one. The exterior one of this mesh are not this one because this is a folded mesh, but this is still an interior line.
Edu,
Yes?
I'm sorry because my internet got a bit stuck and I lost the beginning. Did you create a plane in Rhino or a curve or what did you do?
I created 3 curves in Rhino.
Ah, okay, and you okay.
And I just put them all together in one component, or you can reference them and just connect them to boundary surface to create a first initial surface. After we select each one of them individually, and we extrude one up, one down. Actually, this is just something that I like it to do like this, but it really doesn't matter.
Okay, thanks.
When we have the breps, we join them, so they are one unique brep, and we mesh them. Why is important that the components are meshed together? You see here, the points of this mesh correspond to the points of the next mesh. Because if this was one mesh, this was one mesh, and this was one mesh, it's really important. Let's reduce the point count. That the points are coincident. What happens if instead of doing a join, we just automatically mesh each one individually? First, you see here, this edge has a point here. Let's extract the points so we can see them better. Deconstruct mesh. This is just for visualization purposes. So actually we can see that this mesh, one second guys, I'm having some problems with the cables, they just got disconnected. Okay, sorry guys, some technical issues. Just moving everything again to the screen. Share screen, screen 2. Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen now? Sorry, the screen
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
it got disconnected. We have so many cables in this plug. So actually this mesh is different from this one because we have, you can see here, we have 3 breps, different breps that we are transforming to a mesh. And by so we will have 3 different meshes. And if the points are not coincident, first it will think that these are independent meshes, but second, the anchor points and the tension between the lines will not be kept. Why? Because the points are not coincident. Let's have this option at some point open, so actually we can see what happened. Let's assemble first the script and later try what happened if we have it wrongly connected. So we have the edges and the curves. So we want to deconstruct what? Ooh, the mesh edges. Let's see first. Okay. So we want to have the lines. You have the lines of each one of each individual of all the unique mesh that we have. So what we're gonna do is, for example, let's see what kind of data we have. List icon. So actually we can see here that we have one of the lines. Why? Because this is a naked edge. That means nothing is connected on the other side. but that doesn't mean that this is a continuous line. These are individual lines that are actually producing every phase of the motor. So how we can anchor these points? Easy. We can take out the endpoints of these curves, and we will have the endpoints automatically generated. We will have the start and end point of this line and the start and end point of this line. Obviously, this is the end point of the left line and this is the start point of the end line. So what we will have? Lot of duplicated points. Actually, we have 152 points. So we need to cull and erase the points that we don't need, that are equal. So we use the component, the nice component of Kangaroo that is remove duplicated points. So now, instead of having, list length for sure, list length, (70) 152, we have 76 points. As you see, it's actually half of it. And you might say, okay, why I don't want to use always only the start point, so I don't have already the duplicated points. You see, it's a slightly different number. So because this component behave, sometimes you have naked edges of only one line. So you always want to extract both of them and use the component to actually clean. Just in case we produce duplicate data to actually clean it after. So we have the anchor points. Okay, this is the geometry maker. We have the mesh component that we have it here. This is our main geometry. Let's group it. So we know that we have to connect everything there. Let's assemble the rules. What is the first rule for a mesh? Show the mesh. Okay, what will be the next one? Anchor points. We want to anchor or geometry. This is Kangaroo. What is Kangaroo 1? Yeah, Kangaroo 2. So we want to do what with the points? Anchor them. Okay, so we want to anchor which points? The ones that we just cleaned. Okay, what is the strength? It's already quite high, so I'm not going to change it. What is the next thing? It's actually produce tension on the surface. How? We have the component of mesh edge length and the length factor that we will need to reduce. So actually the slider in this case is from 0.0 to, let's say, 2.0. So we can also augment and make it smaller. So let's put the edge length of 1. Length factor is going to be exactly the same. So in theory right now we have forces, but the forces are uniform. So it's not going to do anything. Let's assemble this simple set of rules and see what happens. Okay, what's the next thing? The engine, the Bouncy Solver. We want to connect. Before connecting anything, you have to turn it off.
Things, no?
Hmm?
And we should flat the results.
Yes. But actually, Armand says that we don't actually need it, but I always done like this, so I will keep it doing it. Button, let's reset. Let's see the threshold is okay, tolerance is okay, damping 0.99. It's important that the damping is 0.99. And let's list item what? For geometry is going to be the first one to come up. Actually, we can see in mesh, line. So actually, let's list the mesh and let's color it. Custom preview. And now we can switch off everything. You don't see really well this color, no? So I'm going to change it maybe. Sorry. Ooh. You see well the color on the screen? Okay. So let's switch it on. As you see, it says convert. What means convert? That has done all the calculations, and actually this is the final result. You can see here in iterations that has taken 10 loops, because remember this is a loop, always moving from the previous calculation to the next one. So convert means it has finished the calculation because has reached the flat point or a breakout point where nothing else, and nothing more is happening. Why? What is a threshold, for example? So threshold is the number that says stop the engine if the movement of whatever you are calculating is less than something. In this case, the movement has to be really small to stop it. What happened with those set of rules? We don't have anything actually making anything. We have edge length, but it's saying keep the same length. So actually, it's not going to do anything. Let's reduce it. Oh, you see now it's actually recalculating everything because has not reached a state when everything is completely stopped. Even if we see a stop, there's small changes in the calculations that make it not stop completely. Let's reduce the edge length more. As you can see, even if we put a length factor of 0, 0, it's not reducing to 0 the edge length. Why? Because of the strength. So let's put it in 1. Let's switch off the calculation, reset, and let's increase what? The refine of our mesh, so we can get much better results. This is clearly too much. This is what you have never to do. Move your slider. Let's do 300, for example. Okay. I think it's going to be too much, so let's reduce to 200. Okay. So now we have the length factor of 0.9, for example. Let's reset and let's switch it on. You can see we are producing a surface, and this component is taking a lot of time to calculate because we have a lot of edges. So how we can reduce it? This thing by reducing a little bit the refining or mesh. Let's set up 100, and instead of increasing the refining of our mesh, what we're gonna do is actually smoothen the mesh. So it's a smooth component. And let's increase the smoothness to 1000. Let's see what happened now. Let's reset. And let's start increasing a little bit the tension. Let's reset. The strength is not really high, so let's increase also the strength of the edge length. You see now how it behaves. Let's also increase the strength a little bit more. So now we are producing a simple minimal surface. Yes? Oh, Zoe, hello. I didn't see you joining the class.
Hello, yes, I'm here.
So this is, for example, really simple way to produce a minimal surface. Ideally, you always want to have the same size of subdivision along the whole mesh. And that's quite important. You remember I told you before, it's really important that the mesh is a unique mesh. Let's see what happens if it's not a unique mesh. Let's switch off everything for sure. And let's don't use breadcrumb. Okay. Oh, a lot of things happen, no? Already. Okay, let's see what's happening. We have a mesh. Okay, we have 3 meshes here. And the component mesh is supposed to show the mesh. The first 3 things to show, because we have 3 meshes, are going to be show up here. What happened? Why we only discover one of them? Because actually we have 3 meshes and we have a list item only for one of them. So let's fix this and let's still connect both to the preview. Okay, this is more or less solved. Ooh. Let's see what happened with the endpoints. Ooh, look at this. We have 3 branches, one for each one of the meshes. As we have 3 meshes, we will have 3 branches, Param Viewer, for the naked edges of each one of them that are going to be actually these lines. And now we not only have this one, but also we have the what is supposed to be the interior one, because this is, even if the shapes are touching, they are not together. And even if they are not together, with Kangaroo we calculate points. No, we don't think about edges. So they might be together or not. We are calculating what? Points. What is happening with the points? That actually we have points that don't match to each other. For example, we have the point of this line, of the superior line, and the inferior mesh. But the inferior mesh has another subdivision. And actually this point is not attached at all to this mesh, because the point is not coincident. So for Kangaroo, this point is not at all attached to this other surface, because calculated mesh. But even so, the rest of the script works well. We have the points and we have the duplicated points for each one of them. So let's see what happens when we connect everything, when we try to render the preview. You see, the surface is broken because the points of this zone are not attached at all to the points of this zone. Actually, the points that are coincident are still attached, but the ones that are not cannot be attached between each other. And that's quite important, because as long as we make more tension, let's reduce also you will see that this happens. The points that were not attached to each other, they are breaking up because they are loose.
Can I say something?
Yes.
If you want to make a minimal surface, I guess it's better to use the soap fill to make a zero curvature mesh.
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's similar to the smooth, but as Armand says, it works much better. So let's make the brep join. It's going to explode. Oh no, didn't explode that fast. And you see we are losing the attachment of the endpoints. Why? Because the anchor is now really weak. So for that, let's make an incredibly high number. Let's remember it was polynomial. So we're going to use power of 10. So we're going to make 100 is going to be elevated to power of 10. Well, really, let's make 1000. So it's going to be a really huge number, almost infinity. So actually it broke up, so it's not working that high actually. Okay, now, so let's introduce soap film and let's take out smooth. It's helping a little bit more than the previous component, but what makes a really huge difference here is actually the definition of the initial mesh. I just want to remember you that we have a lot of tools for making better subdivisions. For example, Laplacian Viewer subdivision, that in this case will make a more equally defined mesh. Well, let's try to. So let's see what happens if we close. Sorry, this is off or on? Off. Let's connect everything. Now it's going to take much more time because we have a lot of edges actually. Okay. Minimum surface, done. Next one. You have any doubts about this script? Nobody?
I can suggest something.
Yes.
I guess if you do like for the base mesh, I think if you build it with the simple mesh, like transferring the B-reps to mesh, so then you're gonna have a one surface mesh per each face. Do you have a simple mesh? I don't know if it's for Grasshopper or it's a plugin. It should be B-rep. And then subdivide that to. Oh, it's not working. Okay.
I don't like that much this component. Never worked really well for me, at least.
Okay. Because I was thinking if you first make all of them with the like same mesh surface, then subdivide them, it would give you more like a unified. Yeah.
Okay, let's try to work on that. So the initial mesh component is giving us this because we have connected the settings. Actually, they are here. This one. Let's see.
Maybe it's because we have a surface and then two poly surface.
Yes, maybe.
So,
Actually, as you might thinking, how to mesh things properly is one of the trickiest things to do, and one of the key points of not only Kangaroo but also Caramba and a lot of topological software processing for meshing.
you know what? Maybe you can make like a surface mesh separately from those B-rep mesh, and then deconstruct that. Maybe I don't know. Maybe we can do the surface mesh separately from the B-rep mesh. I'm trying to do this.
No, Start from red to surface. From this one. Okay, I know what you mean. For example, we can create this one. Lovely, works really well.
Yeah, actually, then you can just remove the points that is inside the curve, and then it's gonna give you the mesh. And at the end, we will build it.
You mean deconstruct and rebuild the mesh again?
Yeah.
No, but because you're still missing the point. No, it's not liking it.
Yeah, okay. It's quite tricky.
Yeah, that's. What you can do, maybe we can try, is not build a surface mesh, but build divide this into surface, this frame into surfaces, frames, no, because this is frames, sorry, the divide surface. We got the points, mesh from points.
You have to increase one toward the mesh. +1, I guess. Or I guess like the indexing is like or one more, one less. It's not like a same indexing.
No. Not liking it. Well, let's jump to the next sketch.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Okay, so the next thing is we're gonna do is, what is the here? Particles. That is funny, quite funny. So let's see what we're gonna do. So actually we're gonna produce a lot of balls. So this one is actually really nice for making animations. Plup, 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 plup. Like a swimming pool. For this, I already said last time, also Arman mentioned it, Grasshopper is much more better, is much better than Kangaroo for it, but it gets much more complex. So we can do more or less certain amount of particle collision in Kangaroo, but we cannot get crazy and produce millions of points. I will say we can produce easily until between 500 to 1000, and above that, actually, you will need a NASA computer to calculate everything. So let's see how actually we do this. It's much simpler than you might think. So let's make a rectangle. Let's hide everything. Let's produce a rectangle, quite huge. Too huge. And we're gonna move it up because we want to throw our particles from the air to the floor. Okay, let's move it the same, really high. Because I want to try different things. And now we're going to we want to produce a lot of particles in here. What is the easiest way to do this? Actually, is populate points. Populate random points. Let's say 100, that is the defect value. of this component. Actually, we have already almost everything. This is the base geometry. So let's go into Kangaroo, and we're gonna set up Goal Collide and Collide 2D. So let's do Sphere Collide. Why? Because the particles actually need, this is a point, but they need an area of influence to calculate the collisions. So first we need to set up of points, okay. And second is the radius of the spheres. Just for visualization purposes, let's more or less put a sphere in each one of them. So actually we can see, as you see, if we put one, it's going to be really small. So let's make 5, more or less, these spheres are more or less nice size. Okay, and the strength, let's also put a quite huge number. Okay, so we have the points, and we need a floor. Floor, what is floor? Never remember what is floor. Points, here, floor. We need a floor that we need to be really huge in strength, so the balls doesn't go through the floor. And we need to put force on the balls so they fall down, because right now they are not going to fall down. The gravity doesn't exist per se, computationally speaking. So we're going to set up a load on the points. Negative of 10, for example. And let's assemble everything.
Here you don't have the show thing?
We don't have any mesh, David. We only have points. Actually,
Yeah, it's true.
the sphere here is just for visualization, so we know which ones are the original. Let's put them in a color, different color. So we actually see when they lose their position, where they're gonna fall down. Let's move this one higher, slower, because I have to zoom out a lot. Okay, and let's assemble the engine. Okay, Bouncy Solver. Boolean, button, to goal objects. Okay, what we have here? We will have a lot of points somehow. Where are the points? We don't need to put the component show, no. Maybe it's about the order. This doesn't show up here, but we have the points. It's funny. Sphere.
It's vertices. It's the middle one.
Ah, it's vertices, sorry. Yeah, it's the points. So true. The bottom one is only for the composite shapes, like the show components. Okay, let's see the spheres falling down. Super fast, actually. So one option is reduces the forces, or another one is actually damping. That is not slowing down everything, because also you lose accuracy when you damp, but also produce that effect. You see, now we can see, but when we damp, you see that the balls are not bouncing in the floor. They come and they stay quiet, because we reduce the amount of calculations somehow. Let's take it away. And you can see they bump a little bit. So damping also reduces that part. Boom, boom, boom. sphere collide. Let's see what happened also when we increase the point count. 200. And let's reduce the strength of the floor. And let's put a really small load. But you can see each one of the balls are falling down at the same speed. So actually we can assign different loads for the different types of the balls because basically what we have is a list of 200 points. So if you assign two different forces, each ball fall in a different position. Let's also make collide 2D or solid point collide. That actually is not that good, it's for layer. Let's see. For example, here I have assembled the same sketch. We have the points, the initial points, and we have the loads. And you can see here we are creating random numbers, a list of how many numbers, the same amount that points. We have points, we have 200 points, and we have created 200 values of different forces in the load. We have created a floor and the sphere collide between each other. So if we check this animation, what is going to happen? It's going to give us actually a false appearance that the balls are falling down randomly. But also something else is happening here. Maybe you didn't notice.
They spread.
Actually, the balls are pushed to each other. In this example, the balls are not touching each other. So actually, that's why they fall in just a linear way. Because they just have a vertical force and nothing else that they're moving them apart. So let's see what happened when we reduce actually the size of the rectangle, or just we put the balls much closer between each other. Let's reduce it a lot. Actually, now we have a super nice mesh made out of balls, spheres. So let's see what happened now. We just changed that the balls are touching each other or not. We have to see this preview. Wow. They kind of first explode all around. Why? Because
They are together, so.
And the sphere collide, yes, and the sphere collide was too strong in this case. The force of keeping the spheres away from each other is really strong. So now they spread out, like they bounce out. And we just reduce a lot the sphere size. Look. Okay. Let's also do the same as we were doing in the down part, that is created different forces for each one of them. So we have how many points? List, length. Actually, we know because we have created the points ourselves. So we can just take this slider out. Oh, sorry, I'm moving everything. Okay. So we need to produce 200 loads. We can produce a series of loads. What happened with this? We will create a growing force from the initial point to the last point. As the population of these points is not linear, and for that I'm going to explain with a list item, these points are not created 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in this, in series. They are quite random in the creation of these points. Let's see, for example, this is 1, 2, 3. You see, the points have really random locations. So actually, we can assign a growing force, but as the points are in random locations, they will see that they are actually also, the forces are also randomized. So actually, we don't need to create random forces. But what happened here? We are creating a list of numbers, and we don't, with the maximum number will be determined by the amount of the step size and the count. Actually, it's better to use, for example, range. So we want to create 200 steps. Remember, points, forces, but actually this component creates steps. So actually it's 199 steps instead of 200. So we need to subtraction 1. So actually we create 200 numbers. The range of the force, we can constrain it. Okay, construct domain. We were using more or less 0.2. That is quite small. So let's go from 0.1, the lowest one, to 1. And we have a range of numbers from small to big. As the points are random, we don't care. But even so, what happened if instead of creating this population of points, we have actually created points in a linear way here? Because you can also create points creating a grid. Size of the cell, base plane for the grid. For example, in this case, we have the grid here. We can also extract points. And these points will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and like this and so on. So these ones are in order and these ones are not in order. Let's try both later. So we have a range of numbers. We can randomize the numbers. This component actually creates a list of ranged numbers. Well, not ranged, creates a list of numbers between a range, that is the domain, but with different spacing. The range component actually keeps the same spacing between all the numbers. The random one doesn't. And in this case, actually, it's much better for what we want. So this component is also creating 200 numbers, but the spacing of the numbers is not equal. Another option will be, if you want to create equally spaced values, will be to use the component range and after use jitter and shuffle. Shuffle, where is shuffle? Oh, it's a plugin, I don't have it installed. Well, it's a component that is called shuffle that actually mixes the values between each other. So this one actually mixes the values and randomly shuffles them. So this and this will create similar numbers, but slightly different. Let's connect them in the negative, for example, and let's preview what is happening. The explosion is too big, so we don't see it clearly. I'm gonna first unfreeze this and augment the space between my points so they actually don't explode, because right now I want to control how they fall. And having them all together is not allowing me to see that part. So you see, all the points are falling down at different speeds. And it's nice because as the points are random, they fall down quite nicely. Let's see what happens when we connect a range of evenly distributed numbers and after jitter. The effect will be quite similar. But what happened when your population was not random? Actually, we have a lot of points that are these ones, size of the grid. Sorry, we want to create a bigger grid. So size of the grid is 50. For example, we have these points, let's flatten them. And instead of connecting the component populate, and I need to list length. So actually I'm measuring the amount of points I want to create. I have created 36 points. So I need to create more subdivision. And I want to move them up to move up. How much I want to move? Exactly the same amount. Almost the same amount. And I want to create at least a range of numbers that are growing from small to big. And these points also grow from the first one to the last one in diagonal. So actually the points are going to fall down like a rain coming up from left to right, because the points have order. Where are the points? I have jittered them. So actually I have transformed them also into random. What happens when they are not random? It creates like a rainbow effect, because the points are growing from the first to the last one. And if the numbers do so, they create like a wave. So how you create your data actually matters a lot. As you can see, it makes a huge difference. Let's create random points, random values that even with a clear set of points that are in order, you can still randomize them. With this, I just went slightly out of what we were doing, but I want to explain about the importance on how you manage your data. Let's go. Okay. Let's switch off everything, like these kind of things. And let's decrease the size. Oh. I want to use this one. Reduce and press the balls to each other. Okay. If you also set up wind in these ones, they will move in a certain direction. So it's all about setting up more forces to this one. Let's apply the wind. We cannot apply wind to the, didn't know that. For example, what is a wind? Actually, it will be the same as a load, but in another direction. So we can use the load component, for example, or you can set up a magnet. So actually the points, if the points are too close, they get trapped to each other. So some points can actually drag other points. For example, right now, all the points are moving away among other ones, no? What happens is some of them are attracting themselves. So for example, let's select some random points. Let's make everything clear. So we have a first set of points that are these ones, and we want to select a few of them. So we can list item them. And we want to select between 0 to 200 random numbers. So we want to construct a domain to create the limit, because we want numbers between 0 and 200. That is the maximum amount of items that we have. And how many numbers we want to create? Let's create 50 numbers. So actually 1/4 of these points are going to be chosen. Only a few of them. And these points are going to be magnets. What is the radius of this? Actually, I don't know. Let's try. Let's increase the radius to, it was initially 0.5. Ooh. And actually it's creating a dispersion. The force of collision is still too big. So let's augment the spacing between the balls so they don't. So actually we can preview again nicely. So these points are being attracted to each other, and they are falling down, and actually they are really far apart because some of them are being attracted. Let's see, strength, let's put 100 or 1000. Why the rest of the moles are moving down? Because actually, you see, the points are being dragged to the ones that attract more, and by so they are pushing other balls from their way. Balls are fighting between the balls to fly away. Sometimes we can use other components, like for example, bomb. Let's say now that the script has fall down, we can create a bomb to actually move the balls away again from each other. But let's try different things. Let's say, for example, that we have this rainfall of points, 150. That the balls are almost pressed to each other, 120. Yeah, better. So we have again this one where the balls are going to try to fall and split, but we want to have a box just under them that are going to trap some balls, like a box to trap balls. How we do this? Actually, we use the solid point collide. That is a component that it will keep the points outside of the mesh. And actually, outside of the mesh is really relative. Because let's say this is a breadth, but let's consider a mesh. It means take the points out of this mesh. But how we how we can create a box to contain the points. Actually, we need to draw. Okay, super nice this. We need to actually build a mesh with that shape. So if the ball falls into here, keeping outside of the mesh will still be inside the geometrical mesh. It's a kind of mess to explain because the outside part of the mesh is all that are out of the surface of the mesh, but the geometrical contention is a completely different thing. Just to make this slightly simpler, let's first use this mesh, a simple mesh, and after we'll go to the box. So we have a breadth, set one breadth, yes. Actually, I'm going to rotate the breadth so you can actually well, let's do that later. I think we can rotate it. Height. Okay. We want to transform into a mesh breadth. Not really refined. So settings, because I know automatically boxes they don't mesh really well. So this is the solid. What are the points we want to keep out? Are these points? Though if false. If false, the points will be kept out of the solid. So actually we want this on. Okay, only one mesh, and the mesh is not intersecting to each other, and the strength. This component needs to be actually really big again. So we're going to use the same, that is power of 10. And we're going to connect it. So now the balls are going to bounce out of the mesh. Probably not really well because we don't have a lot of definition on the mesh. Oh, it worked. Yeah, like a table where the points are falling down. But you can see actually why this. The spheres is the visual representation of the points, not the spheres. So we are not calculating the spheres themselves. So actually, if you want to have an accurate definition, you will need to create a mesh that is slightly bigger, counting for the radius of the spheres. So if this is the real mesh that you want, you will need super slow, always the solid collision. You will need to create a mesh that is slightly bigger. Volume, because we want to scale on its own center. And let's try a 0.5. Actually, I'm not making this accurately, but it's more or less going to be like this. That is half of the sphere. 1.04. So actually, the mesh against the which one we're going to collide is going to be slightly bigger. Why? So let's not preview that mesh and let's preview the original mesh. So when we bounces the ball seems that actually we are colliding with this mesh, but we are colliding with the other one to take into account for the radius. And you see the radius was not really accurate, so that's why half of the ball is out. It's still inside. And these are a lot of little things that you always need to take into account. What happens if the balls, if this is bigger? Actually, the balls are going to be floating above, like magically, because we are colliding above another mesh. Okay. What happened when the mesh show? For example, you can redirect the balls to different locations. Okay, so this is what happens when we have a box. How we can keep everything contained inside another one. It's just exactly the same. Select one breath, and let's bounce everything. These are my spheres. I don't see them really well, so I'm going to put them with a super bright color. We have a lot of things on right now here. Let's switch on the spheres, the original ones. Actually, it's the preview, what I want, the original one. So we have the original ones, we have the collider, we don't want the collider, and we want the original scale up mesh. We have the initial one because we have the same problem as for the original cube. So we want to show the smaller one. Let's see what happened now. Actually, the balls are almost inside. As you see, it's still not working really well, and some of the balls are still through it. So for that, we need to work again with the scaling part. What happened if now, oh my God, super slow. If now, after the balls have fallen down, I can put a point. Let's, with a bump. I'm gonna just momentaneously, I'm gonna bake this because I think that's the easiest way. I have baked this geometry. I'm gonna hide everything. I have this geometry in Rhino, and I'm gonna put a point just here. And I'm gonna erase this. Why? Because now I know that I will have a point in the base of the cube. You can do this by decomposing the mesh, etc., but I think this is the easiest way. Point, set one point, and a bomb. Kangaroo. What is kangaroo? Kuka. Kangaroo here. And a bomb. I want the location on this point. What are the points to be affected? All of them. The detonation. In which number actually is going to happen the detonation? At the start, the beginning? Let's actually see the counter and see when everything has more or less stopped. Okay, more or less at 200, 300 iterations, 400, everything has stopped moving. So let's say at 400, the explosion will happen after 400 iterations. The strength, I don't know. And reset, we need to also connect to the reset button of the, and we connect everything again. So now we're going to supposedly have an explosion. So let's see. After 400, should explode. You can see the balls have moved a little bit. The explosion was not really big. And actually, this is something funny. The points to be affected are only what? These balls, not the mesh. So actually the point could be, if you make an explosion here, if the balls are around, they are going to be only moved because the explosion is omnidirectional. It's going to have vectors in all the directions. If you want that they move up, you need to actually locate it down. So they actually move up also too. So let's set up 1000, really strong detonation. And let's see what happened. And the force is still too low compared to the load, the pushing down force. So actually it's about tuning down the parameters. This is just exactly the same as you have on the scripts that you have on the web page. In this case is particles, but this example is slightly different. We have the point collide, the sphere collide, the different forces, but here we have created a domed shape by just creating a rectangle, moving a little bit down and up to create a surface, and just a plain mesh surface doesn't work because there is no in and out. You always need to make it a closed mesh. So for that, in this case, we use Weaverbird mesh thicken to actually produce a thick mesh where to keep the points out of it. And the component is actually the same. Ooh. Let's reset. And you can see the balls falling down on the surface. You don't see it really well everything because a lot of things are on. Oh, sorry, I forgot to switch on the mesh.
It's cool like that, actually.
Yeah, also could be like, yeah, you're true. You can see the cubes are doing random things. Why? Because right now we can see really well that the box, in this case, they are not spheres. I'm pre-releasing with cubes. They are fighting each other on the solid point collide. And imagine that also these forces, you have magnetic attractors that actually you don't only have the crest of the surface of the mesh, but you have some of them that are attracted and fighting against each other. Sometimes you don't want to use spheres if you have a lot of points because they are really slow for calculation. So actually what you can do is, let me stop this. Oh my God, stop. Okay, stop. So what you want to do is use a boxer, for example, that is much faster. And the size is 1, no, by defect, so let's make it 2 and 2. 2, 2, 2, yeah. And actually, the big problem of the calculation is actually we have a lot of spheres at once, and Grasshopper doesn't like to have too many spheres. So let's try again with the voxels. And you can see now everything has speeded up a lot just by changing the component, because a sphere, the mathematical equations to define the sphere are much more complex than actually just a voxel. It's like Minecraft in life. The last one, if I remember properly, is almost the same, just minor tweaks. Yes, with a really bouncy surface where the balls just fall inside the mesh, because the difference is actually keep the balls inside the mesh, not outside. Okay. Oh, I'm taking a lot of time today. Explain everything. Do you have some questions before we jump into more things?
I just want to ask why you didn't use the collider instead of the pointer.
Which one? Collider.
Yes.
Because always collide to the and collider for me is the worst components of actual Kangaroo. They don't, to make them work properly is tricky. Well, for me, at least always that I try, I never get to make anything really reliable with that. Because collide 2D actually, first is on 2D, and collider, you need to have, is really power resource consuming based on that actually it works with the points of a mesh. So actually putting breps doesn't work really well. So happens the same that if you have a center box, center box 2020 and 30 in that. So for example, let's say you want to collide these two elements to each other. What actually this component works with is mostly the points of the mesh. So to actually make them collide with a real intersection, you need to have a really dense mesh. So that makes everything so slow. I don't like at all because of that. For that, actually, the bound is much better to have the Flexcopper. Flexcopper has a component for that. I don't know if I have Flexcopper installed. Let me check. I think no, I don't have it. But one of the examples of Flexcopper is just that: solid collides, accurate solids collides. Flexcopper, Flexcopper, Flexcopper. Yes. And let's go. I'm gonna go. I don't remember the example, so let's go to actually the example ones. Flexcopper put for Rhino. Oh, maybe they have a video. I don't need to even open. Bunny. I think they have a video, but I don't remember where. Well, in general, for example, if you want to actually make the ball that we just did through this drop in the wind fabric, Flexcopper is much better because actually what is good at is calculating the points of the mesh, and by so is putting the balls and in this case the particles against their own mesh points. So for that it will be much more accurate. So actually, when you want to have a solid collision, what you want to have is the highest definition of the mesh as possible. And for that, Flexcopper is the best one. And actually, one of the best ways to see this is this mesh cannot fall through itself. And by not falling through itself, that's something that actually Grasshopper has a lot of problems with, is able to actually make proper solid collisions. Oh, we lost also Arman. I don't know.
Here.
Huh? I don't see you. Ah, okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but
So,
it was amazing. Thank you.
Flexcopper is much better for that. Like, no way, there is no comparison at all. I would say it's useless. Kangaroo. Also, for example, if you want to do proper self-folding things like origami, everything that has self-intersection, do it in Kangaroo needs a lot of work compared to Grasshopper to make it properly folding. So let's go through the last example of today. We can do planarizing, or we can do a little bit of photogrammetry. What do you prefer, guys?
Photogrammetry.
Yes, please.
Okay. Actually, I have a really funny example here that you will love. Let me just show you. For example, let's say we have this wireframe and we want to go through the minimal lines of it. Sorry. So we have these points and we want to find the shortest path between. There's a component called shortest path. I'm just going to explain a little bit this component. So we just created a mesh and we extract the points of that grid, a three-dimensional grid of points. Okay. And we created a lot of points, or we select some of these points. And these points are connected through this matrix of lines. So actually, how we can go following the initial matrix of the points, there is a component called shortest walk that actually works well if you, for example, you have the plan of a city and you want to use the what is the shortest walk. It's kind of what Google Maps used in the beginning. Now it's much more optimized, but so actually finds out the shortest path between the points on a matrix of lines. And in these examples, I explained a little bit on how Cocoon works. That is actually based on that you have some lines, each one has a traction field to create a surface that will be charged, curved charge. And with this component, you actually mesh it. So you can create three-dimensional spaces that follows a matrix. And after we have some refining options to make it smoother. For example, this. Because today we are not going to have time to go through this example.
This would have saved me on my thesis before 3 years ago.
So actually you can produce this kind of structures in a more or less easy way.
Edu, how to call the minimal distance component again?
Shortest walk. There are two different ones, one for Rhino and one for Grasshopper.
Okay, thanks.
It's quite nice, actually, this component.
Have you tried Dendro for like volumetric?
Really nice. Actually, it's one of the examples that is in the folder. It is Dendro. I call it mesh fixer because every time that a Boolean doesn't work in neither Rhino nor Grasshopper, Dendro always works. So actually, Dendro does the same, but in a GPU-based way that is really, really, really fast and can create this kind of shapes in milliseconds compared to Cocoon. Cocoon usually takes to like 3 to 6 seconds to create, and Dendro like half a second. But unluckily, not work for Mac, only for Windows, and as I have seen, not all the Windows. Okay, let's go with photogrammetry, Vox Populi requirements. Okay, first let's go to basic things that you can do in photogrammetry. In the folder, in the class folder, you can see Baulaura Point Cloud Example 5. You can download it. It's a 3D scan that you can download. It's not really big, it's 10 megabytes. So you can use it without freezing up your computer too much. But let's say that first you have I don't like this. I don't want this. First, you have a mesh, a simple mesh. In this case, it's a simple Laura mesh. So, for example, we want to just color the height of the mesh because it's a topography, so we can know which one is the lowest zone of this mesh and which one is the highest one. So we want to know what is higher, the top of the tree or the house, because measuring visually is not really accurate. So what we can do is color the mesh based on the height. So we deconstruct the mesh and we extract the points. And what we're going to do is measure, deconstruct each one of those points and measure the Z value of the points, of these points in the space. Let me take this out. So we're going to extract the minimum and the maximum of, let me put the bifocals too. Bifocals. So we're going to deconstruct the bounds of the Z. It means to take out which one is the lowest value and which one is the highest value. So actually, we have a domain between -31.59 to 9.6. Why those values? Any clue? Why these are the minimum and the maximum of the values? Come on, guys.
Initiating where the drone
Yes,
started.
exactly.
You
Because
took
actually,
the length
huh?
of the. You took the length of the point of the bounds.
Because actually, you see the model is not in zero. And why is not in zero? Because when you do photogrammetry, one of the things that are inside the pictures is the camera position. One, the accelerometer of the camera, usually, if you have accelerometer or gyroscope, and also the position of GPS coordinates. The GPS coordinates also include also the height. It's not that accurate as other ones, but also includes the height. And depends on the camera that you are using, depends also, in this case, it was a drone, but could be on the phone. You have relative height and absolute height. Absolute height will be the height in respect of the Earth and zero, that is the sea level. And after you have relative height. Some cameras only include relative height and not absolute height because GPS coordination in the Z is much less accurate than in the X and Y. So a lot of cameras only include relative height. So relative height is, in this case, is a drone, is where the drone took off, where it started flying. So from that, the drone will consider as a takeoff point zero origin of the relative height. And everything that is above is 9 meters. So for example, I know that the drone took off in this backyard. So everything that is above this is positive, +9. So the maximum height is 9 and the minimum is the lower point that is -31. Not really important here, but it's important when you process point clouds to understand these kind of things. So what we can do is take a gradient from the lower value, that in this case is -31, to the highest one, that is 9. And what is the value that we're going to control with is the Z. So, and you can put the gradient. How we color a mesh? You can use the mesh color, but it doesn't work for this. Mesh color, why it's not showing now? Okay, mesh colors, but this is for assigning repeated patterns. So when a mesh here, you can see normal, but you can see colors. Actually, this original mesh has no colors. How we can assign colors to the mesh? Actually, it's the opposite component of deconstruct a mesh, that is reveal the mesh. So as long as you give the same amount of vertices, the same amount of faces, and the same amount of colors related to the same amount of vertices or faces, is going to assign properly the mesh color. So, and you can see here, let me switch on this, the mesh color based on the height of the triangulation of the points. And we are doing it based on what? Actually, we are doing it based on the points. And that's weird. You say, because the points cannot have a color. No? These points cannot have color. Actually, point clouds, the points have color, but that's another different topic. In case of a mesh, the points don't have color. So actually what we are doing, if this is color 255, 00, 255, 00, 255.5, actually we are taking the average of these 3 points to make the color of this face. So you could either do this or take the center of each mesh face. The result will be the same because actually we are making the average between the points that conforms each face. In this case, also we extracted some values to put a tag. What is the tag? Is based on exactly the same. Is we create a scale so we can easily preview this kind of models to someone that, for example, doesn't know how to navigate through a 3D model or something. So it's more or less easy to preview, to interface and create simple interfaces for meshes based on the same data. In here, I have created a series of rectangles. I have created, you can create either a rectangle and subdivide it, or create, for example, 10 rectangles and assignated a range of heights based on this subdivision. And just put with, for example, text 3D. Actually, this component, you have tag in the standard component of Grasshopper, text tag 3D. So you can put three-dimensional text, and it will work quite well. If you are interested in this kind of things, I recommend you the tool FabTools that has three-dimensional tag. That is actually a real three-dimensional tag that makes the text rotate with you. If it doesn't work, when this component broke up, or text dot. So, for example, you see now these are more advanced text things, but they also work well because actually they change the size based on your approximation and they rotate with you. So if you're navigating through a 3D model, sometimes it's nice. And you will say, why they don't start with processing point clouds? I'm gonna start right now, don't worry. So let's go to point cloud. What is the folder? Here, grass. Okay. Point cloud vegetation. You have 5 types of doing the same because each one does in a slightly different way. First, I want you to introduce on how to actually read point clouds in Grasshopper. You don't do it by opening a point cloud in Rhino. Actually, this will crash up probably your Rhino automatically if you want to process the data. You don't reference a point cloud because point clouds are processed in a different way. First, let's see how the file of a point cloud looks like. This is not the file. Where is the desktop? No, I want to see. Sorry, I'm closing things. I have too many things open. So I'm going to open the file of a point cloud with Atom or any text editor. So I go to desktop, grass, Laura. It's going to take a little bit of time, even if this point cloud is small. Okay. Welcome to a point cloud file. Is in the PTS format. That is one of the standard ones. So how to read this data? And this depends on first your exporter and the program they use for processing. to know in which order you are processing the data. So actually, PTS files are really, really simple. So this point cloud has almost 500,000 points. It's the first number. What is the third one? It's a point cloud, as the name states, is X, Y, Z, reflection, and color, RGB. Actually, this is just a point with a color, because point clouds have color. Something weird. Yes, points can have color. In point cloud, they can have. It's a format that can have colors. So how to open a file? We only use what is called path, file path. It's a component that is like using the file open document, but as internal component of Grasshopper. So you're going to select one existing file or select new file location. In this case, I don't care. And I'm going to choose my Valora point cloud. And I can see with Connect a Panel where I'm referencing my point cloud or where is my file. Quite important. Let's use Volbox. All of you have installed Volbox? Because I hear some of you could not install also Tarsier.
No, only Tarsier we have.
Only Tarsier.
I
Volbox
have
doesn't,
at least.
Volbox doesn't install?
No,
And you have Mac or Windows?
I have Mac.
Okay.
In Windows, it does, I think.
Sorry?
I Windows, I managed to install it.
Sorry, you have dropouts. I don't hear you, sorry.
I'm sorry. I think in Windows it's fine.
Oh, fine. Okay. Well, more or less both works in almost the same way. Let me see if I have.
Sorry, how did you actually trace the file? Because, like, open the file in Grasshopper.
Okay. You choose bifocals first. Okay. You take file path. In this case, just add path, and right click, select one existing file. And it will pop up a window to select your file.
Okay, but does MTL work or not?
Sorry?
MTL files?
MTL files, I don't know.
That's what I have as point cloud for some reason.
You have a point cloud of MTL files. I will need to, actually, if you can open in a text editor, we can see the structure. Really depends on the type of file. Which program do you use actually to create this point cloud?
Metashape.
Metashape.
Yeah.
Actually, almost all the Metashape. This is Agisoft, no? Yes.
Yeah, maybe it's export instead of OBJ. It has also the MTL, which is only the points.
Actually, I have this one too, and I have always exported to PTS files.
Okay, maybe it has the PDS and I didn't.
I'm just opening a file. Okay, let me see. Open the link. It's frozen or it's not frozen, or what is happening here? Yeah, here. Okay. Export points. PTS. There you have the format. Daphne?
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Okay, I'll try.
Actually, if you are interested in publishing these files to online, I recommend you this. It's a really nice web interface that Agisoft exports to. That is POD3. It's an open source OpenGL point cloud viewer. And it's really, really powerful, and you can embed tools online. Like, for example, make sections. You import your model, and actually you can take and make web interface from your 3D models. It's really cool.
Nice.
It needs just a little bit of coding, but it's not that much. Like not something that you can do more or less in 1-2 days without no experience. And actually, loading 3D files in the web browser and doing online it needs a lot of computational power, and there are different ways of doing it. And actually, Pod3 is one of the most interactive ones, and you can actually choose also gradients and make analyze, for example, annotations. You see one type or two, like you can interact with them. It's quite cool. I just remember because I can see it here, Pod3 format. Okay. Let's not get too crazy with this. So one of the important things when you import a file is actually you didn't open it yet. You are telling Grasshopper where is the file with this. So what we need to do is load a point cloud. In case of Ballbox, is cloud. What is load cloud? It's crazy. What is load? Here, YouTube, load cloud. That is actually the component to actually open the file. So before connecting anything, you need to set up what? First, what is the data structure or the mask? How is your data structure? For example, this is X, Y, Z, the N, RGB, and the percentage of points that you want to open. Really important. This actually makes up everything. One is import your whole point cloud. And obviously you see it right now, I'm opening like 1,000 of the point cloud, that is just these points, and it's already taking 125 milliseconds. Check when I import like 0.5% of the point cloud. Okay, not that bad. What happened when I import 10% of the point cloud? Oh, sorry. Oh, cannot wait. One. This slider is constrained, I think, to 0.1. Frozen. So actually, when you work with point clouds in Grass, you always want to do it with just a little amount and a small percentage of that point cloud. Really important, because everything becomes so slow. It's my biggest recommendation I can give you. Let's wait. Maybe it's gonna take like 30 seconds. Easily. La 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 la. Tarsier has also options for this. I think, can I escape? No. Well, as you see, it's quite slow. Let me close and reopen again. So be really careful when you work with point clouds on what are you activating and what not. Especially in the file that I gave you, because you have 6, 7 open clouds that you don't have to switch them on at the same time. If not, you're gonna crash your computer for sure. Let's see. Okay. Let's open the file again.
You can also manipulate the code with Python, I guess, right? If you want to change the arrangement of RGB on the points.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Because it's just actually Oscar says did this in the second week. Actually, everything is a text file.
Yes.
Okay, let's open just a little bit more. Okay. So we have this point cloud that right now I didn't select it, so I'm going to select it. You see a little bit of time. Okay. So first thing is open the point cloud that is loaded. Actually, it's not even open yet. And the second thing we're going to do is deconstruct the point cloud, because this, if you connect a panel, you will see they are not even points yet. As point cloud formats are slightly weird. The points are not points by themselves. They conform like a group. It's like a block of points, and when you open a point cloud, it's not itself points. You need to explode them, unless you open directly your point cloud file in a text editor and use Python. So the same as we do with a mesh or a breadth, we need to deconstruct it. And we use the deconstruct cloud. I'm gonna do later with Tarsier, okay? So don't worry. But the first one to stay in Wallbox because the icons are slightly easier. So we have to deconstruct the cloud, and what you will get is points, the normals, and the colors. So based on the colors, and colors are just data, again, you can process a lot of things. So for example, we can select points based on the colors. So let's not see this, let's see this. These points, we don't preview them with colors, but they have colors. So what we can do is deconstruct the points, and we're gonna assemble the points and construct again a point cloud. In this case, it's weird because I'm using at the same time Tarsier and Wallbox, because Tarsier has some components that are faster than Wallbox. It's weird. Actually, I think the perfect is to match both of them. But let's say I have these points and I want to create some points and take out the points that have this color. So I want to create how many, sorry, I want to actually take out of this point cloud of this model, 3D model, of the points that are between these colors. So for example, this could be a vegetation selection because this is greenish, bluish, more or less. So I can choose other colors and change the color. For example, I can say, I want this color to be, I don't know, another one. For example, green. And this one, so I can change the gradient of color to actually select only greenish colors. Let's go with Tarsier. Oh, Tarsier, where is Tarsier? Tarsier, here. So in Modify, actually, we can filter the point cloud based on what? Tarsier is good because it has a component to actually filter the point cloud. So we can select automatically the cloud based on some colors. Do you understand this component? So most of times we'll need to do the same as we do sometimes as we compare that if this, for example, construct point, deconstruct point. So a lot of times we take the point and we say, if this point is smaller than, I don't know, 5, tell me yes or not. No, you dispatch them. This is a really classical structure in Grasshopper. If make a condition. So what we are doing here is actually kind of the same, but just in one component. So this one, what you feed is a lot of colors, and if the color is coincident, select it, and we have a threshold. It's the same as having the component similarity. That is, if this number is similar to 5 in a percentage, that is a threshold. For example, let's say 1% or 10% threshold, all the numbers between 4.9, actually 4.8 and 5.2 will be taken because they are similar on a 10% error of the fifth number 5. So actually this component does kind of similar thing. Take out all these colors and does in a threshold of 0.2% for each color. Why we don't give automatically just, okay, I want this color and say, okay, everything around this color in a 5 or 10% will be taken as vegetation. My experience told me that it's always better to create a wider range of colors than increase the threshold in case of photogrammetry, but really depends on the photogrammetry scan that you are using. Once you have this point cloud, you can deconstruct the point cloud and assemble it again. It's something weird. Why? Because Tarsier has a lot of components for constructing, deconstruct, and display the point cloud. But the ball box component of color the point cloud is better and especially faster. I don't know why, but it's better. So actually, if you take this component, cloud and cloud, you can do it. The components are going to be, in theory, here, point cloud. Let me see. Yes, is this one, no? Yeah. So the point of Tarsier is if they display them in black. That is something that I don't like it. I prefer much more the option of voxel, ball box, that gives us the points represented as a voxels. That's why the name ball box, I suppose. And it colors the voxel based on the color of the point. So actually here we can see, I'm just augmented the size of the points. We are seeing all the points that are in a 0.2 threshold from this range of colors. And in this case, this component selects the points that are in that range. Not, it doesn't cool them. It list item them. Do you understand this part? I mean, I know it's slightly difficult. Hola?
Yes, I think.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Sorry, it's like I don't see your cameras and sometimes it's like this. So in this case, as this component only list item them, how we can actually, for example, produce something like this? Produce display preview image pages. Okay, for example, mix the components that are between in this range and replace, for example, for those components by a red. So I want to see in my 3D photogrammetry which points are in this range. And I don't want to see the range. I want to see clearly which zones of my scan are between this vegetation color. So for that, representing and changing those points by a bright color is an easy way. So you can make high contrast. But this component doesn't actually mix everything together and doesn't do that. Just tell us which ones. So a tip is you can deconstruct the point cloud again, construct it as a voxel one, because they construct the components in a different way. You cannot connect the components straightforward between the both components. And what you can do is, again, with the point cloud, make a comparison. From the original point cloud, you have a full point cloud and a point cloud only with the points that matches this color. And we do a similarity. We look for the similarity in the colors between both. So what we are doing is we are looking among all these points the whole initial mesh, or whole initial point cloud, we are going to look for the original, for the points that we have put in a different list. And we're going to check for the similarity on the colors. And what we're going to do is replace the ones that we could, the ones that are similar, we're going to replace those colors by a bright color. And we assemble the mesh, the point cloud again, and we voxelize it. Yes? No? Because this is the easiest part. The other ones are much more complex.
Yes, it's a.
Okay. Like sometimes it's tricky. I don't know if you understand or not. And today I don't have a good day explaining things. So let's go for the next one. So in this case, we were doing the same. We have a point cloud, and we deconstruct the point cloud. So what we're going to do is create a series of numbers, because colors, what are the colors? Are positions. Actually can be thought as points in the space too, because it's just 3 numbers at once. So actually what you can do, and this example, what they are doing is transforming, yeah, in this case is transforming the colors, you see, color, we break them up because it was a text. Let's switch on this. So we have a point cloud. We have a component in Volvox that is break out the point. So actually we can constrain, if this is the whole point cloud, we can constrain and trim the point cloud so only take a fraction of it with a whole geometry. So we can kind of break the point cloud in a smaller zone and only take the points that are inside the geometry. So we work with less points. That will be box crop and cloud engine, that is transform the cloud. So we have only these points. Okay. Let's increase the number a little bit because we have really a small number. Okay, so we have these points and we have the colors. What we can do is transform the colors into points. So how we do this? You can connect the points literally to a point, but it will not be the same. It's about that the structures of Grasshopper, but if we have these colors and you connect points, it doesn't transform, it doesn't create a point based on those colors. So actually what we need to do is create a little trick, that is split the text of this. So we split in the comma, and what we're gonna get is a list with the 3 points. We're gonna list item them, and we're gonna construct a point. And now this point, yes, is accurate to the original number. It's something a little bit messed up, but it works quite well. And what we can do is we can create a range of colors. Actually, this is the visual representation of the, let's say, RGB spectrum of the cloud in the space, because actually this is location between R, that is X, G, Y, and B, that is Z. Is the RGB in the space of colors.
Nice.
So actually you can create a gradient, I don't know, this gradient, and you can do exactly the same. For example, this is the color representation of this gradient in the space, is this one. It's funny, this kind of things. I like it a lot. This. So what you can do is look for similarity of the points among these ones and these ones. So which ones, for example, are closer? You can do it by closest distance, that is an easy component. You can do with similarity, which components are similar, which points are similar between each other. So actually you don't process color, what you do is process points in the space. You process points of the space of the color of a point cloud that is also points in the space. It's like inception. So you process similarity, and what you do is the same, is replace some of them. Duplicate the data based on the points and replace by the colors. And you assemble back the scan. And what you get, for example, is this, that in this case, I broke up everything because the colors were bad. And sorry, can I go back? Am I reading? Yes. So actually, I can see here in a small voxel, or you can use also the component that is actually not from Placer, not from voxel, is the Delaunay color. Ah, it's actually Delaunay color is from voxel. I thought it was from Grasshopper native. So actually, it's reproduce a point cloud or a mesh based on the points, because what we have here is points. For example, if we have all these points, you can use the component Delaunay to produce a mesh. It's producing a mesh. What happened? We don't have colors on this mesh. So voxel has a component, Volvox has a component that is actually Delaunay but with colors, because takes into account the color of the mesh. You could either do this by deconstructing, because Daphne doesn't have Volvox for this. You can deconstruct the mesh, construct the mesh. This mesh is going to be constructed based on the same amount of points, 1,707. Yes, we have the same amount. And we construct mesh. We have done before. We connect the vertices, the faces, and where we can connect the colors. We have the colors here, exactly the same amount of colors, so we can just connect this. And Delaunay mesh is exactly the same as producing this.
And the component before, how is it called?
Sorry, before.
The green one. Ah, the Delaunay mesh. Okay.
Is in the standard mesh in triangulation.
Okay.
Because if you connect directly or put the points literally, I never tried, but I think it doesn't work. Let me see. So actually, you need to first make a Delaunay. Yeah, for sure. You need to make a Delaunay that actually will order the points out in the space, make by the closest triangulation between the points. And based on that, when the data is structured inside, you can actually deconstruct it again and construct the mesh to add the colors. So actually, the Delaunay mesh color of voxel, of Volvox, does this, but in just one component. And after, we have another type that actually this, I think, is the best way to actually compare colors. I'm not taking into account of like actually processing points based on the height, etc., because I think this is all something that you already know how to do it. And I think the color is much more interesting in this case. Actually, this was a great idea of Surush. So actually, instead of comparing and deconstructing the points in the space, that is weird, first, and second, if you have too many points, it slows down things. What you can do is do a HSL color comparison. You can do colors. Colors can be deconstructed in a lot of different ways. And actually here in display, in colors, you have all the types of color processing. And Surush told me that if you can actually analyze the hue, that is just one value of the voxel in photogrammetry, is much more accurate than other methods. Why we don't see this? Okay. Point out, yes. So actually here we are taking the points, and what we do is deconstruct the color into a channel, reflection, saturation, luminance, etc. But especially the hue. Time is another methodology of measuring the combination of the colors. So what you do is the same process as we did with the points, but by looking by similarity, by deconstructing other colors with a threshold. What we need to do now is flip the matrix and some match addition and check for the ones that are similar to those ones. And we unwhip and we replace the colors with those ones. And again, we construct the point cloud and we mesh color the points. And if we display the edges, actually we can see, and I think this is one of the closest approximations of this method, because it's quite nice and we actually can see the colors of the point cloud that are between these. Why it looks that awful? It's just because we are processing 5% of the point cloud. Let's try to process only 10%. Actually, you see each time gets better. Actually, it's not taking that long. Let's go with 2. It's exponential, so we need to be careful. Come on, 3 seconds, 5 seconds. No. Oh, actually quite nice. Sometimes when you deconstruct the mesh, this can happen, like infinite highway to hell. So you can start increasing. When you have all the setup ready, you can see which components are slower than other ones, and you can think on how to replace those slow ones. That's why, for example, this method is better than this one. But I wanted you to explain this one first because it's easier to understand than this one. And the last methodology for photogrammetry is a plugin that actually is from one professor from school. Actually, it's from Aldo Solaso. They develop a plugin that is the Ndvi Analysis. I don't know, but if you know, but Ndvi is a normalized differentiation index that is actually, when you take a picture, there is much more information than actually what human can see. And it's especially based on the infrared spectrum. So the images capture more infrared and more ultraviolet that we can see. What happens is we don't process it. Usually cameras have filtered to avoid this kind of excess of data, so we see the image as natural as possible for us, not for the actually how the real world is, because what we see is not the real world, it's just a small amount of the real world. So we can take the data that the camera is capturing and process it to make a high contrast picture on the Ndvi. This is actually the infrared penetration on the vegetation. How vegetation reflects infrared wavelength depending on the health state of the vegetation, on the water content, because also influence the infrared reflection, and so many things. So it's what is called Ndvi analysis or Ndvi detection. So for example, we can see a crop where the vegetation is low. That means this zone has almost no water. So this crop needs to be watered much more than this zone, and this zone is healthier than this zone. So actually right now in agriculture is something that is really used. Actually you can see actually how the different colors reflect on this. By default, cameras infrared filter have a filter to prevent the camera from this, because cameras and digital sensors can actually take much more color that we can see. So but we have is a little filter that is usually red because it's for infrared, that filter out this option. But some of this filter doesn't filter completely all the infrareds, just filter a few of them. But if you have a cheap camera, especially a webcam or something, or an old camera, I recommend you that you can try to tear it down and take out this small layer, because usually it's a really thin plastic or a little piece of glass with a coating. This is how you can obtain to have a infrared camera. Actually, also it's a nice project for outputs if you match this with a LED infrared, because it's how actually you make night vision cameras. If you can light up with LEDs that are infrared, that I'm pretty sure you recognize this. It's the infrared LEDs, the normal ones that you have on your Arduino kits, and a webcam camera, but without the infrared filter. So that's how we actually make night vision. Night vision is actually lighting up with light, but in a wavelength that we don't see. But I'm pretty sure. Sorry?
No, I said what?
What? Yes. So actually, for example, you see that a lot of animals, when they look at the cameras and the night cameras and the movies and everything, they always look at it, because I'm pretty sure they see a little bit of that infrared. I'm not completely sure. This is just an assumption, but it's something that always makes me think a lot of times. So why we don't see as well with the night cameras that with the day cameras? Because it's the same as having a flashlight, but a flashlight that we actually don't see. But this is just interesting thing that you can do. So with infrared analysis, or cameras, in this case, this point cloud, was taken with a normal camera, but still normal cameras can take a little bit of the infrared spectrum. And we're gonna use that to process it. Right now, infrared cameras, there are really cheap ones, cheap ones. They are getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Ndvi camera. Right now, you can find them only for like 500. This one is regular to like more or less 1,000 to 5,000. Right now, they are getting really, really cheap. And actually, they are not usually Ndvi cameras, and they're actually the same format as a GoPro. They are called multispectrum cameras, but because they have one normal sensor, one not filtered infrared sensor, one not filtered infrared sensor, but for a different wavelength, and they have another sensor that right now I don't remember which one is. So usually these cameras, what you do is do photogrammetry with all the 4 cameras at once and mix all those data together. So actually the content amount of information of your point cloud is higher. And one of the points that is higher is one of the reflectivity, that in this could be normals, but depends on the file format, accepts much more data. You remember it was X, Y, Z, and colors, RGB, some formats accept much more data. I see the chat, someone is more data. So what we're gonna do is the Ndvi calculator, and this is a plugin that I thought that I have told you already last week. That is the Ndvi Nero Network Environmental Robots. Is this plugin? And luckily, as it states clearly, it's a beta. They never developed it completely, and a lot of people has trouble for installing it because it needs a lot of permissions on the computer. So I'm pretty sure it will not work for Mac, but for Windows, at least for me, it worked without no problems. And it's quite straightforward. So you deconstruct the point cloud, and you take the red, this red channel next to the infrared, and the blue to make a comparison. And you use just the Ndvi calculator. This plugin has just 4 components, not really complex. And you make the color range, and the multiplication of the color range, it was going to give you the vegetation index. We assemble again the point cloud. This takes longer. I don't know why I have switched on voxels and mesh at the same time. Okay. Actually, you see in this case, the linear mesh is faster than the voxel one. So actually, we can see this is a fake, because it's fake. It's not fake. It's not as accurate as a proper infrared camera or Ndvi camera, but it's the best we can get with just any kind of. So any kind of camera that you can have, your phone or etc. So with the multiplication, you actually are changing the threshold of this to see the amount of vegetation index that you want to actually control. That's it. This is different ways of processing photogrammetry data that I think is quite nice. And what you need to think, and actually I love photogrammetry, and if you are interested, we can have more discussion and see what we can do with it. And that's it for today, guys. You have question?
Edu, I just have a question on the last part that you explained.
Which one? This one?
No, the other one that you changed the range of yes, this one. I mean, I didn't get what it means to change the range of the color that you did.
It's increase the sensitivity. Okay.
What does it do?
How to explain? Well, first, I cannot open the plugin, but I can assume look what it was doing, just some pure logic. So, for example, we have this image. Okay, so this image has everything almost the same colors, no?
Yes.
So if we assign, for example, sensitivity on the green from 0 to 200, there is almost no range, no? All the colors between will be between, for example, 100 to 150 on the green.
Yes.
So actually, increase the sensitivity, it means raise scaling up. So instead of you having the green between 100 and 150, scale it up from the 100 B0 and the 150 B255. So actually we are increasing the range and like open up only that color. So actually we can see better the small differences between the colors.
Okay.
It will be is sampling. Actually what this is called sampling. So for example, you have this amount of colors, no? This is the maximum. But your unit size is this. This is my unit size. So in this spectrum, oh my God, this is so bad. I have only colors here because my picture is just a forest. And here I have a lot of greens, but I don't have anything else here. So for example, if I divide this into 3, I have only one block of information, and this block is almost empty. So the amount of information of this is almost reduced to 0, no? In a 0 to 100 scale. Yes?
Yes.
Or no, you can say also no. What happens if instead of having big divisions, I'm making small divisions? Okay, actually here I can fit 2. You remember what Oscar said about averaging data? Like the equations that you can smoothen the data?
Yes.
More or less, no? A little bit. So for example, in this block I have 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. In this I have, wow, 100, 100, 100, 0, 0, 0. But before, if this was one block, this is really amount percentage. So actually this is like 20%. So instead of taking up big blocks, we take smaller blocks and we only consider the information that has more than 50% of information. So actually we will discard all this and we only take the parts that have more information. Let's say if you have a graph and you have peaks, you can take the average of this, no? It will be more or less something like this. or you can only say, okay, I only want everything that is above this line. So actually here I have a lot of data. So actually, if I just make the average based on the data that is above this threshold, my data is really high. My final line is really much higher than this one. In a simple way, is increasing the sensitivity, or in this case, the multiplication on the NDVI range. Sorry, oh my God, it's messy to have the two screens. Is only taking, is to force to only take in account where we have information, not where we don't have. But some images, like, I don't know, I know because this image has a lot of wide range. You have a lot of colors. So actually this image has information here, 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 and here, and here. But if you increase the sensitivity, what happens is you are only taking this and a little part of this, and you are losing data because you're only taking the highest parts. You are not taking as much as you can. Increasing the sensitivity reduces the amount of information you get because you discard everything that is below a threshold, but helps you to get to the peaks. By reducing the sensitivity, you start taking more. But in case you don't have a lot of information, you only have a little bit, it's gonna actually constrain you back, not help you back. So it's something that really depends on the information that you have. It's not the same having this image that having the forest that we had before.
Okay, thanks.
That helped you a little bit?
Yes, yes, I think I got confused because I thought that the prices are fixed somehow for the infrared. But yes, I got the
No,
point.
yes, no. That's completely different. In the infrared spectrum, the wavelength is fixed. What happened is first we start with a camera, in this case, that is not infrared. So actually we know that we are not reading data here. We are just reading a little bit here, just in the limit. And we have already a little bit, just a minor spot of information. So actually what we need to do is amplify it. If you have a proper infrared camera, I'm pretty sure you will not need to amplify it, because you will have all this side of the spectrum in your data already.
Okay.
Okay, more questions? No? Okay.
I have a question. Just
Yes.
super fast. Are these point cloud have it like it does have a coordination, right? Because what I'm seeing, it's just like a point. It doesn't have a coordination on like a surface of like a,
Wait, what do you mean coordination?
like earth, like the Earth Dome coordination, like WG84 or something like this.
Depends.
Like depends how you're recording the data, I mean?
No, depends how you export your point cloud. Actually, when you export your points, for example, let's try, I'm just trying to export, like, I don't know, this point cloud. It means coordinate system. A PTS file has no global coordinate system. That is what you're talking about.
Ah, okay.
A PTS doesn't have it, but other formats, yes, they have. If I remember properly, Stand4Ply, that is also another more or less standard point cloud format, can do it. No, dense cloud. No, really depends on the format that you are using. On the mesh, actually, most of time it does if you don't do STL or OBJ. If you export a model in FBX or
Okay.
Colada does, for example. Autodesk FBX, I think it also does, especially binary GLB and U3D models because they are more kind of GIS informed formats, or KMZ,
Yeah.
KMZ, they do.
Okay. Okay.
Safe is support for reference and modules only. For example, this model is not georeference, so actually it doesn't allow me to export KMZ. So let's go to model. I think Colada does. No, this model has no coordinates, so it's not going to allow me at any point. But it really depends on the format that you are using. I think I have a point cloud that has coordinate systems. Let me try to open it. Data photogrammetry.
It's gonna be like a origin point, and other points is gonna be in relevance with that point, right?
Sorry?
It's gonna kind of be having a like a coordination of one origin, and then yes, yeah, of course. A stupid question.
What is this open? What is all files? Open all submodel files. Is this one? This file is super huge. Really depends on the coordinate system that you have. Some of them they have, for example, one of the things that I told you when you read the data of point cloud in Grasshopper is know how you actually have your data structure. You can have it as XYZ, or you can have a UTS coordinates that it will be actually latitude and longitude. No, this I don't know which file actually have it with, but I know I have one with maybe if in recap we can do it. Recap photo. Export model. I don't know. Actually, Daniel says checks XYZ. XYZ point cloud format. Yeah, for example, this one depends on if the initial mesh actually is coordinated on a global system or not. For example, it's a XYZ, but as X is a coordinate of latitude, Y of longitude, and etc. So actually, it will also inform a little bit if your model will be actually deformed by the surface of the Earth, or it's completely flat and fake representation. That will matter a lot. I will probably think that it's mostly based on how the reconstruction software processes the data and what data was taken into account. Because actually here retopolize view visualization and solid wireframe. Yeah, because actually when you reconstruct, what you are doing is actually taking the point cloud, and even if most of the software what you finally look is for the mesh, all the data that this has is actually the points, and the points could be geolocated because you have actually your cameras, and each camera is geolocated in the space. So if you can geolocate, you can make simple triangulation, you can geolocate clearly the points. I never won actually with GTC coordinate. Like never had the chance or the need for it. But I have seen. I remember perfectly showing up some pop screen on the softwares like, do you want this system or this system? This standard. So I'm gonna stop the camera, the recording. Daniel says that XYZ to reconstruct the elevation map on a site. You can also talk, Daniel. There is no problem.
Daniel, you can talk also.
No, it's too shy.
I'm shy. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the class is over. I hope you like it. We are a small group, but they are always interesting in this group. So thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Edu. We enjoyed it.
Yes, really nice.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
See you tomorrow.
Cool, man.
Bye. See you
Bye
tomorrow.
bye.
Bye.
See you.